Welcome to Starting Point, Session 4. As a reminder, hopefully you've had a chance this past week to work through this session, to work through it personally and privately on your own. And now you're in your group setting here. We have a chance to discuss that later with the group. Just as a reminder, too, be going back and watching those Missional Living stories. Remember, they're available on the app on the Missional Living tab. There's a new one each week, at least one. But also they're available on some of our other media locations and stuff, too, that you can watch those. But want to make sure those stories are getting into your mind and to your life and thinking about this is how God is already working and moving in our church or with some of our global partners that sometimes they're in the stories. But just to begin to get your excitement and thinking about what God might do in your own personal journey, in your own personal story. And my hope and prayer is that your story or stories that you have will be some of those missional living stories that make it on those videos that we can begin to share to encourage others so that it becomes just a natural thing if you're a part of Mitchell Road to go, man, we live on mission here as a church and there's stories coming out all the time and just listen to some of these and be encouraged about what God's working and moving and here's how He's working and moving in our relationship as we do that. That would be our goal. That would be exciting. So if you haven't watched one even here at the beginning of your session, you can hit pause now. Go watch one even now just to realize that what we're shooting for, what it's looking like, what our goal is here is for these to become just who we are. Not something we do, but who we are is living on mission and experiencing God's work and power in us and through us around us. Remember that picture we had from a couple sessions ago, from our personal relationship to God, extending to our personal spheres of influence, extending there into the community opportunities that we are presented with, and there into the global opportunities that become available that we let you know about or that you hear about as you connect internationally with spreading the gospel around the world. So as we look at Session 4, last week, remember, we talked about personal spheres of influence. This week, we're talking about local community needs. So wherever we are part of different communities. Whether it's the community that you live in, your neighborhood or your apartment complex maybe. It's the neighborhood or the community that you work in. That's got, I know some people work from home, but you're still on Zoom calls with people. You still have to go to meetings from time to time or lunch meetings and connect with people, that community of people. Or maybe you're in school and it's friends that you connect with. Maybe it's at the lunchtime or just in class or in extracurricular activities. Maybe you just have social things that are going on in your life and things that you're a part of, organizations, different activities and skills or just crafts, whatever that case might be, but you're connected with other people most of the time in those settings, right? So that's your community. Where you're coming into contact with people is your community. So we're looking at that here specifically, and I just wanted to highlight some of those areas and unpackage some of them as you're thinking through what starting would look like for you in those areas. So as we look at that, we're on page 16, and what it would look like there, as we talked about last week, starting with prayer, I think is always most important and foundational, and to continue through the whole process, because this is a work we're wanting God to do in us. It's not a switch we're trying to flick. It's not something we're trying to try, right? This is training, and part of training is that process of praying, reliance on the Holy Spirit, looking to God, being in desperate need on Him. So we're praying, we're asking God to do that. One of the things talked about here is looking for needs that come to your attention. Be listening for that. So like this, if you're not listening and looking, there's just too many distractions in life, right? You're going to miss that. But when you talk to a neighbor and they're like, oh, did you hear what happened to so-and-so down the street? Yeah, her husband lost his job. All of a sudden a light bulb goes off to you like, wow, they're in crisis. They're hitting a really hard place. They're in a challenge, or you talk to somebody else from work and they're saying, hey, did you hear what happened, what happened to her? She got a bad diagnosis from the doctor and is really struggling. A light bulb goes off like, oh, there is a need, there's an opportunity there. Somebody is hurting, somebody's in need, and it's a place for me to move not away or not stay on the sideline and go, wow, that's terrible, or I'll just pray for them, but a chance to move towards them. Those are those opportunities there that we're the salt, we're the light. We might be the only Christian in that particular area that has heard about that need and has an opportunity to respond. So don't ask yourself, gosh, is that a place God would want me to move towards? Make the assumption that if God has let you come upon that information to hear about that, whatever the means was, that yes, He is asking you to take a step towards them. Now, maybe they have other Christians that are doing that. Maybe you've got a community of other Christians in your neighborhood or at work that you can work together. But take the initiative and assume the responsibility is on you to move towards them. That's a huge part of this whole process, is realizing that and taking that first step. Another thing I wanted just to bring and remind people of is these missional living grants. Right now we have set up that between $100 and $500 we're giving out grants to people in our church that are looking for an opportunity, a way they can reach into their community. For example, some people have wanted to host like a community barbecue or gathering, and there's just a lot of people in their neighborhood maybe, but if they had $200 or $300, which that would be the kind of thing we could help them have a little extra money, they could get the food, they could have some decorations, they could get out some advertisement, and they could really have a better job at inviting their neighbors and having a chance to meet them, having a chance to start talking about some of those questions you can ask that open up the doors to talk about spiritual topics. You can hear about needs people have, so you can start moving towards helping to meet and care for those things. If we can help with that with missional grants, we want to be able to do that. So we've only had a few people that have requested those so far. There is a criteria. You can go on the app to our Missional Living tab, and you can scroll down and see what some of the criteria are of things that would need to take place to make your chances of getting a grant better or not. So that information is there, the application's there, but use that as a resource to help you maybe do some things to connect with your community that you might be hesitant because you didn't have the money. Well, we want to be able to help with that and partner with you on that. Another area that I think that's important for us to think about is the area of racial reconciliation when we think about our community. No matter where you're at in this Greenville greater area, there are more and more people that don't look like us, that have a different skin color, or maybe came from a different nation, or speak a different language, or multiple languages there. We need to be thinking about that. It's an issue that we see come up from time to time when something big happens in the news that reminds us that, we're not really all on the same page here. There's really a lot of differing views here. And unfortunately, the church has not always had the reputation of being the people that resemble and smell like Jesus in those settings. And we want that to change. That needs to change. So there's some ideas here and some things you can think about how you can handle that differently, how you can have a posture of empathy instead of a posture of defensiveness, how you can move towards, how you can be there to really help build bridges rather than burn bridges. So look at some of those suggestions, and let me just encourage you to lean in. And let me just say this really directly. If you think you're probably fine in that area, that's probably a good indicator that you're probably not, because it's an area where we need to realize that it's something we all need to work on. And if you think you don't, you're probably skipping over, or you probably have some blind spots. And you could talk to a good friend or spouse, or if you had a friend who is of a different race and they were honest enough, and really you could ask them what their thoughts were. And if they felt the courage to do that, they maybe would tell you some areas that you could grow and develop in those areas. So let's do that, not for any political agenda. Let's do that because we are loved by God, and He came and has rescued us, and He is bringing the nations to Himself, and the nations will be represented on the new heavens and the new earth, because all men and women, different skin colors, different languages, have been created in the image of God. That's where we're going, and we as the church should be helping to build that way and pave the path. So think through that. And by the way, maybe it's going to things like our Montgomery trips when those happen and come up. Those are some opportunities. Look at some of the opportunities here with Mitchell Road specifically. The Mitchell Road Friends, the after-school program we have with Mitchell Road Elementary, where the kids come down here to our campus twice a week, or ESL citizenship classes, where we have an opportunity to connect with people that are trying to bridge in and try to connect in our culture and our society, and language is an issue, or they want to become citizens. What a great opportunity to meet with them on a regular basis, build relationships, make a connection. Foster and adopt opportunities. Those are always there, and there's a huge need for that. Other things you'll see here is the Mitchell Road local partners that we can partner with, and ways, and there's emails or ways you can connect, whether it's with Switch, Mill Village, Bel Air, Miracle Hill, Piedmont Women's Center, Homes of the Mission, for example. These are some specific places that we have partner relationships, that there is needs for volunteer, there's needs for help, where you can move out and connect. And maybe one of those areas has something that really strikes a chord with you, that you have a personal passion for, or it's part of your story. That would be a great place to lean in and move towards as well. Maybe you like to bike, and there's a bike shop there with Mill Village there, and you're like, wow, I love biking, and I could be part of volunteering and coming in and working at a bike shop, and that would be a way for me to connect with people. Yeah. So look for those kinds of things. Look for some of the opportunities here that are coming up. And let me just encourage you again, where is God calling you to start when it comes to this? What are things? What are needs that you've already heard about, member in your community or at your workplace or in your social circles of friends? Where are you already hearing that there is a need that you can move in, that you can press in on, and take those steps of faith? So discussion time now on page 19. There is for you to go through what are at least 2 or 3 things that you want to start with. And again, these are samples that we're given here are not exhaustive, right? They're just there to prime the pump. They're just there to start the brainstorming process. There might be something completely different that God's brought to your heart or your mind, or something you're going to hear in this next discussion time with somebody else in your small group, and you go, wow, I didn't think about that. That would be awesome. And just a reminder again, too, if there's a missional living grant that we could come apart, you could apply for that, and we can possibly partner with you to help do something that you might think, oh, that's kind of out of reach. I can't quite do that. That's not the case. We can maybe partner together and help on that. So go through those questions. Again, look at question 5 that talks about training steps. Again, this is so important because, again, it just stays kind of in a trying mindset if we just think, here's some things I might do. Versus the training mindset is when I wake up Monday, or actually after this small group meeting ends, I'm going to send a text, is how you start moving on it, how you're going to move on it. So it's very clear in your mind. So that's what we're shooting for. That's what we're hoping to happen. And again, make that prayer time a priority here, because this is a work that we want God to be doing in us and through us. Thanks for your time. Excited to see what God's going to be doing in our lives.